The following program is made possible in part by the Dayton Bar Association.
Hello and welcome to You and the Law. I'm Mike Monta, your producer and host for tonight's program. And tonight we're talking about a very important program for our community, and it's the Volunteer Lawyers Project. Joining me as guests on our show are the past executive director, 25 years in service. She's going to tell you all about what happened all the way back to 1988. Ms. Helenka Markulewicz, and the present director, who is Kelly Henrici, and she is the executive director now. GDVLP Incorporated, Greater Dayton Volunteer Lawyers Project. Before we get to our discussion, let me remind you that You and the Law is a monthly presentation produced here at the Dayton Access Television Studios. DATV is Time Warner Channel 5, unless they've changed recently. It used to be 20, it's 5 now. And it's the public access of the cable network here in Dayton. Programs also cablecast north and south, generally on public access channel 6 via the Continental Cable Network through the auspices of the Miami Valley Cable Council. Executive producer for the program is the originator of the show, former domestic relations judge Mike Brigner. This is a live call-in show, and there's the number right below me. It's 223-5311. If you have a question about tonight's topic, Volunteer Lawyers Project, please call in. We appreciate your call. The show also streams live on datv.org, so if you're watching on your computer, you already know that. Please keep tuned in. So let me turn to our guests now and ask them to introduce themselves a little more fully than I have done and tell us a little bit about their backgrounds and familiarity with tonight's topic. And we'll turn first to the esteemed Helenka Markulewicz.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Well, let's see. I was the executive director of VLP for 25 years. That's my history. Seriously. I moved to Dayton in 1988 and saw an ad for this position and decided that I wanted to apply for it, which I did. And I'm an original New Englander. And if you keep me talking, I'm sure I'll leave out a few R's here and there, and you'll discover it quite quickly. I applied for the job, and I've been told that the reason they gave me the position is someone asked me if I was married in the interview, and they thought, oh, she may sue us, so perhaps we should give her the position. So that's how my experience with the VLP started. The VLP was actually created in 1988 by 4 individuals. The now deceased Judge Jim Gilveri, Arvin Miller, Steve Uhas, and Ted Gudorf. They had a vision of what they thought could be a complement to legal aid to assist in providing services to those people who really couldn't afford to see attorneys. And from there, when they hired me, they told me what their vision was, and they asked me to create an agency that matched that vision as best possible.
Great. It's nice to have you with us, and I know we're going to find out more as we go along. Turn now to the present executive director. I think that title's right still. And Ms. Kelly Henrici, good evening. How are you?
Nice to be here, Mike. Well, I too moved here to Dayton in 1988. I came from Dallas. I applied for the job of Executive Director of the Greater Dayton Volunteer Lawyer Project, And Helenka got the job in 1988.
They didn't ask you about being married, I guess.
No, they didn't. And they made an excellent choice. Helenka's done so many wonderful things with the project. I went to law school here at University of Dayton School of Law and was in-house at Reynolds and Reynolds and then Reliazon. Spent a few years teaching at the University of Dayton School of Law and running the program in law and technology there. And one day I saw that the position was open, that Helenka was retiring, and I thought it would be really good to see if I can take it from here.
And thank you both for joining us. Why don't we get started by talking a little bit about the history and of the Volunteer Lawyers Project and what its mission is, why is it here, and what does it do?
Well, we started, when we first looked at creating this agency, as I told you, it was the vision of a few people in the legal community. And what we determined was that we should look at the attorneys as our clients. In other words, if we took care of attorneys, they would in turn be available and willing to volunteer their time and help people who couldn't afford legal services. So that our mission statement actually says that we provide innovative opportunities for attorneys to provide pro bono civil legal assistance to people with limited financial means. And I think that has worked really well for us. I call it an attorney-driven program as opposed to a client-driven program. And the reason for that is sometimes I think if you focus too much on the client needs, you forget that you're asking people to volunteer, to give their time, to give their services. And for people to do that, you have to respect their time. You have to really think about what it is they want to give and how they want to give it. So that's how we created the project. And it must have been successful because over the years we've had more than 1,000 members of the legal community who've provided assistance.
The origination came from kind of a spin-off from legal aid. They were not able to provide enough service.
Well, yeah, as the years have gone by, Legal Service Corporation, which is a federal agency, has cut the funding that they give to legal aid. And in cutting those funds, obviously that limits the number of attorneys that are available. So for those individuals in the private bar who thought about this, they really believed that they could augment or complement the services of legal aid. And I do think that's what happens. The actual original, the first day that we tried to get attorneys on board was a Dayton Bar Association luncheon, and Judge Rice got up and explained what the project was about, so that we started in that first week with 250 attorneys. It was a pretty impressive turnout of people who volunteered and said, yes, I'd like to help. And when we say to an attorney or a member of the legal community, would you like to help, we ask them what they would like to do. We don't just say, okay, we have a lot of people who need assistance with divorce, so you have to do divorce. Attorneys specialize. So we tried to make sure that we had enough variety in cases to make sure that attorneys were getting the kinds of cases they felt comfortable doing.
It's particularly interesting to me that you fit this job apparently perfectly. You didn't have background with attorneys before, did you?
I did not. I was the executive director of the YWCA of Greater Rhode Island. Mm-hmm. We had a domestic violence shelter. We had an after-school daycare program. We had a day camp on a 250-acre piece of property in southern Rhode Island. And we had recreational programs too, but they were limited. YWCAs tend to be more about women's issues than recreation. And I actually, at one point, had said to somebody, and I should have said, before the YWCA, I ran a Meals on Wheels program in Boston. And I said at one point to someone, oh, you know, meals, delivering meals, providing assistance to children in after-school daycare, managing attorneys, it's all the same.
Well, I've heard that myself. Whether it's 100% true or not, I don't know. Did you establish the procedures and the mission of this, or did the attorneys have some notion of what they wanted the project to do?
They had some notion of what they wanted the project to do, so the creation and the implementation, I would say probably I created the forms, but the implementation or the creation of the agency itself was with that board that was created when we first started back in 1988.
Okay. What's different now that you've retired and Kelly has assumed the mantle here over the 25 years? Is there any differences now other than probably everything was done with paper and pencil back then, and now it's computerized? What do you think, Kelly?
Well, in fact, I didn't quite understand it during the interview process, why they were asking so many questions about my background with technology.
Mm-hmm.
It's something that Helenka shies away from a little bit, technology isn't some of the things that they were asking me to do is to see what kind of technology tools we could bring to the VLP. It is very paper driven. But we have this database that we work with that's from legal aid. And so we're working with that and the other tools to try to reach out to the community. In fact, we put on Facebook and Twitter just today that we were going to be here tonight. So maybe someone's seeing us because of that.
Well, we hope so, and we hope somebody calls in. Who is served, and what is the range of the services as far as county served? It says it's Greater Dayton volunteer lawyers, but I know it's more than just Dayton now. It started out that way, I guess.
It did. Started out with Montgomery County.
Okay.
And now
We have 7 different counties that we serve. Miami, Clark, Preble, Darke, Champaign, and Greene County are also included in our coverage area. The majority of the population remains in Montgomery County. More than half the population we serve is right here in the Dayton area in Montgomery County. But we do branch out into those other counties also.
And there's more to it than just, and I'll ask you in a minute, how you get the cases to the attorneys and how you get the clients into the office and things like that. But is there more service provided than simply finding an attorney and saying, Mr. X, would you take Ms. Y's case?
Well, we do what our goal is to make it as efficient for the attorneys as possible. So, for example, if we're helping out with some divorce matters, we have a paralegal on the staff who gathers the information, helps prepare the forms, sets up the meetings with the attorney and the clients, and tries to put them together at a time so that we can serve as many people as possible and maximize the use of the attorney's time in terms of counseling clients, going to court, and things like that.
All right. How do folks find out? Obviously, they have to have a legal problem to start with, and they're probably at their wits' end as to what to do, and they probably think, I can't afford an attorney. So how do they find out about you, and what do they do about it?
Well, I think that I'd be interested in hearing how you think that some of that comes about. I know that they try to, they can find out about us on the internet. I know that some people find out about us from various organizations that are also in the social services realm. For example, if someone is the victim of domestic violence and they go to Artemis House for shelter, the Artemis staff knows to contact us and that we can help get them protection through the court systems.
I would also say that word of mouth is one of the big factors in the community. People really, they'll say, oh, they may talk with a friend and the friend says, you know, I really need a divorce and I can't get one, I can't afford it. And they'll say, well, I got mine through the Volunteer Lawyers Project. So I do think word of mouth is a large part of it also, still.
And so it's a process of networking. Then it starts out, you think, with word of mouth, and somebody says something, and eventually they find a phone number, I guess, and maybe some ideas about what services can be provided.
Yeah, and occasionally people will walk in off the street, and we'll provide them with assistance in, by explaining to them how to apply for assistance.
Okay. And we should probably tell them where you're located right now.
Well, we are co-located with our sponsor for tonight's program, the Dayton Bar Association. They've graciously provided office space for the 3 staff members, myself included, of the Volunteer Lawyers Project.
Okay. And that is a good segue to take a very short break. Notice our clock isn't working on our monitor. I wonder why that is. It seems like we're stuck forever at 56 minutes. So we'll either be here forever or I'll look at my watch. Okay. So at the beginning of the show, you saw that we were sponsored by the Dayton Bar Association, and we are. It's been in existence since 1883. You could combine all of our ages and we might get there. It's 100 and, how many is that? 130. 31 years this year. Okay, somebody's going to fix the clock. That's good. And the Bar Association does provide the community with a number of services. A lawyer referral service, and that's for assistance in locating a lawyer, and that's a little different than what we're talking about tonight with the Volunteer Lawyers Project. That's if you can't afford an attorney and you don't know one, and no one has told you who to go to, and call down there. It's 222-6102, and the general number for the Bar Association is 222-7902. Yes. There's also a notary public service for application and testing. Very important project. There is the Wills for Heroes, where volunteer members create wills for emergency first responders, firefighters, police, EMTs, and I just happen to have the next place and time for that, and if you don't have a will and you fall into that category, March 8th, which is a Saturday between 10 and 2 o'clock at the Huber Heights Administration Headquarters, which is at 7008 Brant Pike in Huber Heights. You go there and tell them you'd like a will, and our volunteer members who are experienced doing this will help you out. It's great. There's also public service committees. Our website is www.daybar.org, and it gives you reference information, guides to services, legal links to the courts, all the things you need to know if you've got a legal problem or you just want to know. And of course, the topic we're talking about tonight with our guest, Helenka Markulewicz, who was the original executive director of this project, Serving the Disadvantaged. That's correct, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Founded and supported by members of the Dayton Bar Association. It's a terrific thing, and needless to say, we've also got Kelly Henrici, who is the present executive director, both executives, and Helenka was here for 25 years, and
I'm on week 3.
3 weeks for Kelly. So Bill Wheeler's the executive director of the Dayton Bar Association, been here a number of years, done a terrific job, and continues to do so. And I hope he's watching to hear me say to say that. And it's all true, Bill. So Our number here is 223-5311. There it is. You could be watching and not know where to call, and would love to hear comments or questions about the Volunteer Lawyers Project. So that's enough of my commercial. I do that because we don't have commercials on this show. We're funded, but not commercialized. We're live and in color, as you can see, unless your set doesn't get that. So, okay. Let's get back to actually talking about the Volunteer Lawyers Project and not what I have to say so much. So, clients and attorneys. How do the clients, once they've contacted you, how do you get them with the attorney that can help them out?
Well, it depends on what kind of matter. When the paralegal's working with, for example, a group of attorneys, a group of clients for a divorce or bankruptcy, she will find attorneys that will take that whole batch of divorces or bankruptcies.
One attorney will take a bunch, is that what you're saying? Or a batch? Or?
A batch.
Okay.
And sometimes you'll have up to 12 in a batch, and sometimes they'll all show up and all go through the process with that one attorney. Okay. And sometimes bad weather, things like that. In the last few weeks, we'll have them where 12 are scheduled, and we may get 3 that come in.
So an attorney talks to the potential client, and then what happens?
And they make a determination. Do they file court papers? Sometimes there is enough to proceed. For example, most of the time in a divorce, you go ahead and do the filing. In bankruptcy, the attorney will counsel them, make a determination with them if they should file or take other action to help them out. We also do, for example, expungements. Some people have difficulty with getting employment because of things in their past that are on their record. So we have attorneys who will assess the prior things on the person's record, and if possible, file for an expungement, but sometimes that's not possible based on what happened.
Okay, and this all starts then with a call to the legal aid line.
Yes.
Is that correct?
That's the starting point for everything.
Okay, and then everything kind of reverse funnels out from there. If you do not know the number, I will actually read the number here, and it's several numbers. It's what, 11 numbers, so you gotta listen close. 1-888-534-1432, or just remember legal aid line if you're looking in a phone book or on the internet, and it should give the same number, correct?
It should, yes.
All right. When the person calls that number, what happens? What can they expect? They're sitting home, they either need a divorce, they need some landlord-tenant rights things, bankruptcy, whatever. What do they need to tell the person who answers?
They need to talk about where they live. They need to provide all the personal information so that we make sure they're in the coverage area for the services. They need to talk about the type of matter so that the legal aid line staff member can make sure that it's something that is handled by legal aid or the Volunteer Lawyers Project. They also check to make sure that the individual meets the financial parameters necessary to be to qualify for services through the VLP or legal aid.
And I know it probably depends on the number of persons in the household, but what's a general way a person can be approaching the financial eligibility to get service?
The guideline is 125% of the poverty level. So that translates roughly to about $14,000 for a year for a family of 1. And then for every additional person in the household, you can add about $4,000 to that number. So a family of 4, income roughly $26,000 or below.
And And does the person calling get an answer right away, or do they have to call them back, or what would happen next?
They do find out when they're on that call whether they qualify.
Okay.
And then what happens next is the cases that are going to be referred to the VLP, that happens. And then we assess them. For example, if it's a divorce action, the legal aid line will say you qualify for service. We're going to mail the application to you. When you complete that application and mail it into the Volunteer Lawyers Project, that's when they will make the final determination of which attorney you'll be assigned to and get the process moving for you.
Do the people need an actual phone or phone number themselves? Obviously, they need an address somewhere. No post office boxes, I guess, or do they?
Well, they need to be, for example, for a divorce action, they would need to be residents in the county. So they'd have to provide the address. They do need to provide a telephone number where they can be reached when we need information, when we need to schedule things. Sometimes that's more difficult than it would seem, because they use phones that they don't have minutes on, things like that. So they do call us quite frequently to change their phone number.
Okay. So they find out if they're eligible to start with, essentially. Then they get some forms that they've got to fill out themselves. Do you find that there's easy enough for everybody to do, or do people have difficulty with those? Or
There are people, yes, there are people who have difficulty with that. And we'll sit down with them.
they can come in?
They can come in.
Mm-hmm.
We have 2 paralegals on the staff. Can I say hi, Kathy? Hi, Tom.
sure.
They're watching tonight. And they are so helpful when people need assistance, when they have questions about the process, questions about what needs to be on the forms. They really work hard to help the clients get the service they need.
Are the forms that they get unique to the case, or are they general, or in general for all the cases?
It's just a general application that
Okay.
asks for all of the basic information you would need to create forms for, in the case of a divorce, to create the forms or the complaint for a divorce. And in many instances, the clients have difficulty completing all of that information. So what Tom will normally do is call them back and ask them for additional information. And if their phone is no longer working, he'll send them a letter.
Okay, so a lot of this, the speed of it is determined by the client themselves. You're there, ready, willing, and able to go at whatever deliberate speed they have in the case.
It takes roughly for a divorce action about 4 to 6 months once you get all of your information into us to get put together in a group and to meet with the attorney, get everything filed, and get to the hearing where the marriage is dissolved.
Okay. The type of case that the client utilizes the services, obviously if it wasn't in the Volunteer Lawyers Project, or it wasn't in legal aid, there'd be costs and fees and things like that. How are those handled?
Well, there's something called a poverty affidavit, and whenever we file a case on behalf of a client, we have them sign the affidavit that says that they're below the poverty guidelines and unable to pay the court costs, and then the court will waive them for.
Okay, and all the courts in this county and all the 7 counties that you service do the same?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
In some counties, rather than waive the costs, what they'll do is they'll accept a poverty affidavit and delay the costs until the final hearing, and then they'll set up a payment plan for the client.
Okay. They won't delay the final resolution,
No.
but they'll give them an opportunity to make payments of whatever amount of time necessary, I guess, depending on their job or whatever income they have.
That's correct.
Okay. When when you started, you don't do any criminal work, right? That's
All
done.
of the cases are civil cases. Criminal work is done by the public defender's office.
Okay. So if somebody's got something criminal, don't call legal aid. Don't call you.
They can
Right.
call, but we can't help them.
You could refer them over.
But as a reminder, some people think expungements are criminal cases. They are not. We do expungements. That is a civil matter. It's not a criminal
Okay.
matter.
And we talked before the show about domestic violence, which sounds like it might be criminal in nature. What role does VLP take in that then?
Those really are civil matters, and we do help with both in the context of family when protections needed. We also do civil stalking protective orders for non-family members also. So we do help in situations where violence occurs.
Okay. I'm looking at the clock here. And now I'm seeing myself. We have about a little less than 26 minutes. We're going to take another short break. But this break is to tell you, the viewing audience, if you're watching, you don't have any excuse. There's no Super Bowl. I don't think basketball starts until 8 o'clock. Of course, you got to be watching me to know this. There's the number to call. 223-5311 is the DATV phone number, hotline for this show, and it can be a pretty hot show at times, and depending on your question, and we'd love to see what you're thinking at this present moment. Please call in. We're talking about the Greater Dayton Volunteer Lawyers Project, and we have two superb guests. Helenka Markulewicz, the former executive director, not just any director, but the executive director for 25 years. She's had honors from all over the country, awards, Dayton Liberty Bell, Artemis Peacekeeper. This is the person you'd want to ask questions about this topic. I've got a whole page of recommendations here. If you weren't here to talk to Helenka, the next best thing to do is call this program and find out. Now, we also have Kelly Henrici, who is the present executive director, and she doesn't have the 25 years of background. She's got 3 weeks, 25 days almost of background, but knows everything about this topic. So, and we're sponsored by the Dayton Bar Association, 223-5311. So, call. Tomorrow's too late. There's no stupid questions. That's how we get intelligent, smart answers from your questions, be they smart or not. So, back to the show. All right. Okay. Let's talk about the type of case. We know we don't take criminal cases at the VLP. What do we take and what do we do with them?
Well, the VLP takes a primary area that we cover is family law.
Okay.
That's obviously the biggest area of need. Second to that is bankruptcy, consumer law, expungements.
Do you find that bankruptcy, there's more bankruptcy now than there was, say, like in 1988 when you started?
There was.
There was more then?
No, there was more now.
Oh, okay.
But it has slowed down. So I would say for the past year, it's been much less or much lower than it's been prior to that. And many of the bankruptcies that we were doing were because of the foreclosures.
Right.
And the effect that they had on individuals in our community.
I'm going to interrupt you. We have a caller waiting, and we will take that call. Welcome to You in the Law. You're on the air. And good evening. Hello.
Hello?
Hello. Good evening.
Good evening. Yes, I'm here.
Yes, please tell us your question. And I think we have somewhat.
I didn't mention how the Dayton Volunteer Project is funded.
You may, okay.
Funded.
Okay. Are you asking how we are funded at the Volunteer Lawyers Project? Okay, turn your set down. Turn your set down. Move away a little bit. And just,
Okay. I'm trying to find, are you there?
yes, we're here.
Okay. I'm trying to find out whether the Dayton Volunteer Project is funded.
Funded, okay. An excellent question, and we haven't touched on that. Tell us about that. How are we funded here?
Well, roughly 60% of the budget comes from a sub-grant from legal aid, and that's a sub-grant, actually that's federal money or Legal Service Corporation money. Many years ago, legal aids were required to spend 12.5% of the money they get from the federal government on what they call private attorney involvement. That 12.5% in this particular 5-county area comes to the Volunteer Lawyers Project. The other 40% comes from other grants, and primarily, I would say, from the support of the bar.
And what does that consist of? Go ahead.
We do have fundraising, the Access to Justice. There's a campaign, and we work with legal aid to on that campaign. And we have a gala every year that helps the attorneys come together, learn what's going on in the Access to Justice community, and to support us through that. And then also just from donations from the attorneys who believe in what we're doing and want to help us continue doing it.
So not only are the attorneys donating their time, and I will ask you in a minute, this astounding figure is the amount that they're donating, and they're donating their own funds.
This is true.
And that's a good thing about attorneys, isn't it? We hear not necessarily good things all the time, but there's a lot of philanthropy that's going on here.
Attorneys are very generous and very caring about the communities they live in. I have found over the 25 years that I did this, that most attorneys, when you ask them to help, will help.
Mm-hmm.
And I always used to say the best attorneys were pro bono attorneys.
Okay. And I don't know, maybe we're just tooting our own horn, but what, and you told me the amount before, what, over the years, how much time, money, or, well, what would we call it, donated time,
donated
translates to what?
We use the figure of $175 an hour. I think in the past we used $125, and then at some point about 8 years ago we increased it. But for that 25 years, more than $14 million in services have been donated.
And the beneficiaries of that, of course, are the clients who
That's
would
exactly
not have
right.
had access to the fine work these attorneys have donated.
I remember firms that have put in more than 500 hours in a case, and some attorneys who put 2-3 hours into working with a client. But for every person that has received the benefits or has met with an attorney, a pro bono attorney, they have gotten something that they would never have gotten without the VLP. So.
And sometimes we hear about a personal touch or something. Can you tell us about that, the connection the attorneys have with the clients that they volunteer to help?
Well, I can think of one attorney who became so attached to the family that he was working with, or the gentleman he was working with, that he actually went, when his wife passed away, he went to the funeral. I think the experience that I have had is that attorneys really, when they talk with our clients and realize how difficult some things can be when a person does not have adequate income to survive in this day and age, they're very touched and very pleased by what they do. And attorneys give back to their communities on a regular basis, be it through VLP or be it through what they do for boards and community centers or other agencies within the community. I don't laugh at legal or lawyer jokes, because I know what attorneys are really like.
Yeah, quite an endorsement, and I'm sure the Bar Association, they know you've
Yes,
been doing it
exactly.
for a long time, and it's nice to hear it said. And being a lawyer, and Kelly also an attorney, appreciate that. So I'd ask, caller, are you still there? I'm looking up into the heavens as though that's where it's coming from. If you are not, thank you for your call. We were talking before we went on air about some of the things that your paralegals do, and they're from what, the law school, or they've already graduated from paralegal school, I guess. They do some clinic work in some of the areas. Tell us about that.
Well, Kathy is the paralegal. They both went to the program at Sinclair Community College. Excellent training they got there. They're both fabulous. Kathy works with the bankruptcy and divorce clients. Makes sure their paperwork's in order, schedules the clinics for the clients and the attorneys to meet. Sometimes goes to those meetings if she can. Make sure the papers get filed, all of those sorts of things. Tom runs a clinic for juvenile cases. Once a month, we just kind of have an open forum where clients who have matters involving custody issues, those sorts of things, come to the clinic, and there are lawyers who are there to answer questions and proceed further if necessary. He also spends a lot of time going to the remote counties and talking to social service agencies there, talking to attorneys, talking to the library staff to see if he can get space to run his clinics when he's out there once a month. So they both serve clients, but in very different ways.
Yeah, they're kind of like an open house for folks that are in need or have questions, things like that?
It's a good way to put it. And then if, for example, if the questions lead to a discussion where there is the need to assign a one-on-one attorney with the client, for example, the questions lead everyone to believe a bankruptcy should be filed. We will have that person go through the legal aid line, do the intake work, and get assigned to a client.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So, and people can maybe relate in a discussion group from some other folks talking too, I'm guessing.
Yeah, some days those clients, the clinics get very, very packed. I think it's kind of weather dependent, at least lately,
Right.
from what I've seen in the last 3 weeks.
10 below isn't such a good time for
Not a good day
clinic,
for a
but,
clinic now.
but balmy 25 is good.
We also haven't mentioned that we have two firms that do programs. The Juvenile Court Pro Se Clinic
Okay.
is done by Siebele, Shillitoe, and Dyer. They send their attorneys over to work with the individuals who are in that clinic. And the firm of Friend, Fries, and Arnold actually sends an attorney and a paralegal every 2 weeks into the women's pods to deal with any civil matters that they may have. They also go out on a quarterly basis to the Montgomery County Women's Prison and do the same thing for people who are pre-release. I believe 60 days.
These are
pre-release.
folks who might have some criminal problems, but they also have civil problems attached to that? Or?
Many times when a woman is in jail, it could be because of something that her partner did, and she, as an accomplice, has been arrested, but she may have children that need to be taken care of, so they will go in and
Okay.
assist if they need some sort of paperwork notarized, or they'll answer questions, they'll provide advice, but only on civil matters, not on the criminal matters.
Okay. All right, we have about 14 minutes left. I wanted to talk about a couple of topics, and those are some of the rights in landlord-tenant actions and consumer protection. And a lot of times we think of landlord-tenant things as people getting evicted or what can they do about that, but there's more to it than that, and sometimes folks who are perhaps impoverished feel they've got no tenant rights. So you do some things in that area.
We do, and we do that throughout the counties that we serve. Sometimes it's non-payment issues, but a lot of times there's something wrong with the premises. One story I heard was of a man who, when he told his landlord that there was mold, grow throughout the apartment, he was handed some bleach and told to go clean it up himself. That's unacceptable. That, can't happen. So we help out in those types of situations. One very unfortunate woman that came to us just in the last couple of weeks she went to jail for 30 days, and during that time her landlord evicted her, sold off her possessions. She had nothing left when she got out of jail 30 days later, and so we're trying to help her find out if any of her possessions are still, if she can get them back, or what she's going to do with respect to the landlord.
And that's an uphill battle, even if you hire somebody, I suppose, isn't it?
It's very difficult once he's sold off her possessions, yes.
And lawyers take those cases, I'm assuming, otherwise we wouldn't be here talking about it.
We wouldn't be talking about this one.
So I think what you're saying is if you fall into those categories, if you're within earshot of our broadcast here, or you hear about it, there is something you can do about it.
Well, and even if all you do is talk to an attorney and find out some of the steps you might be able to take to protect yourself, that kind of advice can go a long way. And then sometimes you do take it further and go into the courtroom with the client.
Okay. We have 10 minutes or so left, and I wanted to talk about, I don't know if 10 minutes is enough, but consumer protection areas. And there's some things that I don't think folks anticipate, cars, sales contracts, co-signers, life essentials. What have we, how has that evolved, and what have we run into over the years in that, and how do we deal with some of these problems?
Well, for VLP, when you say how do we deal with some of these problems, we provide them with an attorney, at the
Right.
very least, to talk to. But many of the consumer cases relate to purchasing a car, possibly having signed an as-is contract without understanding what that really meant, and what your recourse is should you take that car, drive it off the lot, and it doesn't even make it to the next block. We see a number of cases like that, or have in the past, and we also see cases where elderly people have co-signed loans for grandchildren and don't realize that if that person, that grandchild, forfeits on that loan, they become responsible. And we do get calls from senior citizens who've been put in that position.
What, if the people call before they have the problem, can you give them advice then, or do we basically have to wait until they're in the pickle themselves?
Well, we can't give advice.
No, I know you can't give advice, and I think what I'm saying is that the type of thing where you can say, okay, we'll find you a lawyer to give you that advice, or is that the type of thing where they've got to find their own attorney or call the bar association for that type of thing?
No, if they're income eligible, we will send them out to an attorney if there's an attorney available.
Okay.
It's because it's important that they have the same opportunities that you and I have to speak with an attorney who's going to, whether it's going to work or not, the fact that that attorney is going to talk with them and listen sometimes can be more valuable to that potential client than having told them, no, there's nothing we can do for you.
Mm-hmm.
Some people sometimes need to just tell their story.
Well, and the reason I asked the question is I think it's important for folks to know ahead of time, like when you said co-signing for somebody. I think most people that do that think they're just helping out, and and they can kick in a few extra bucks, not knowing that they might be doing the whole payment themselves or have to take
Right.
bankruptcy or
Right. They don't know. And if you're asking if we do educational programs, we don't. I'm going to defer on that question to Kelly.
Well, let's talk about that. Should we be doing that? And I say we. I've got nothing to do with this.
Well, we'll
other than
take your
just-
time if
just-
you want to,
just
Mike,
asking you.
We're
But,
going to call you to take a couple cases, if
okay.
that's okay. I actually did just, right now I'm exploring, and I'm trying to meet as many people as I can, and someone I just met is the director of the Life Enrichment Center. And they're faith-based, and they try to holistically serve the individual. And so I've been out there, and I'm going out there again next week, and I'm going to have breakfast with the people who they serve. And I'm going to listen to them and try to learn directly from the people who are among our clients, what type of matters they're facing, and I have great respect for everything that Helenka's done, but the last thing that I want to do come in and say, I'm doing this because that's how Helenka's done it. So I am actually going...
Which wouldn't be a bad thing.
It wouldn't be a bad thing, and when in doubt, I go that route. But I am actually trying to learn from the community where they think our help is needed the most.
Trying to evolve. Where else do we see evolvement in this, as far as getting clients in, getting them aware, and reducing, and I think a lot of the people you have they probably feel hopeless when they start out, getting that hope back to them. What do you think?
Well, I think the way I see VLP as needing to evolve is to become more technologically proficient. The world is changing, not just for our clients, but for attorneys. Right now, I would say 50% of the attorneys are old school and prefer to do things in writing or with paper, like me, like to do things with paper, rather than the new school, which is literally the virtual office, or doing things online. And in the world, so for VLP, we have to know which kind of attorney we're dealing with so that you know
Okay.
how to relate to them. But also, we need to look at, or VLP needs to look at technology and see how technology can help change the way services are provided. And I've gone as far as I can with technology. I am not going any further.
All right. You have a computer and an email,
I have,
right?
yes, I do, and I actually have a Facebook page,
And a Facebook page.
and I've
right?
learned to use it just recently. Since I retired, I know.
No tweets, though.
Well, actually, I did send my first tweet today.
All right. Okay. Well, that's a whole lot of things to transition into.
Well,
don't you think?
and Helenka has embraced this. She really has. Tom, for example, the paralegal we talked about on the staff, one of his visions, and it really is focused on serving the elderly population in the community. People are homebound, and they need directives, they need powers of attorney, they need simple documents. And Tom can take the technology to the home. He loves Skype, he loves Hot Docs. There's several tools that he enjoys using. And he can go out there and actually meet with the client, Skype in an attorney, and maximize the use of the volunteer attorney's time, create the documents, get them signed, and provide the advice that way.
Okay, so he actually physically goes somewhere, but then the attorney doesn't have to go out, but can meet with them as though we're meeting here. We're not Skyping here. I'm looking at the cameras. I don't think we're Skyping. But just as though they're in the office. And, okay. And has that been utilized yet, or is it just in the works? Or
He's gone out and met with people remotely. I think there's a lot of work that he wants to do and that could be done to really make that a program that is very effective.
5 years from now, somebody will look at this program I don't know, maybe they're not looking tonight, but and think this is like old stuff, and we've already accomplished that. But that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, I think the time I spent on the School of Law's campus working with the next generation of attorneys coming up has really prepared me and got me in the mindset of how they're going to practice law, going forward into the next 5-10 years or so. I think it'll be helpful.
It's going to be different. I can see that. You talked about old school just before. How much time do we have? A minute? 2 minutes? I do want to ask this question, that when you see old school, you're talking about people who are established and in established firms and things like that. But the younger attorneys, 25, 35, are way ahead in this, aren't they?
Yes, they are.
And do you find that that we do have a cross section of the younger people combined with the old guard, I guess is the way to put it?
I always tell the story of the two attorneys that were in a case recently, and one was an older gentleman, and he would send everything by mail, or he would make phone calls, and the other person would either email or send things electronically.
Okay.
They never did get along very well.
That's right.
But I'm guessing they're going to get along from here on, because the younger attorneys are going to be teaching the older ones a valuable resource.
Well, and the younger ones need mentoring in terms of the law. So I think that, the sharing can go both ways, and it's good for everyone.
Yeah. Okay. How much time we got? 1 minute. Okay. Well, it's done great for 25 years, and I certainly wish the project well, and it looks like it's in good hands with Kelly Henrici here. So
It absolutely is.
thank you.
Thank you.
So let's we've run out of show here, I think. So to you, the viewers, letting you know this has been a production of You and the Law, a monthly program designed to bring Montgomery County citizens news of the legal world around them. And tonight we talked about the Volunteer Lawyers Project. I want to thank all the volunteers behind the scenes who made this program possible, and especially thank our esteemed guest, Ms. Helenka Markulewicz, past Executive Director of the Greater Dayton Volunteer Lawyers Project, Incorporated, and the present Executive Director, Kelly A. Henrici. I didn't ask you about the A, but it's Kelly Henrici. So I've been your producer and host. I'm Mike Monta. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you again next time on You and the Law. Good night.